right, so obviously when you look at Dak, he comes out today and says, look, we're close. You know this Cowboys team as well as anybody. When you talk about juxtaposing what you saw from these two Super Bowl teams as well as the Cowboys, outside the fact that it's football, any other similarities that the Cowboys can look at those two teams to take into this season?
Yeah, I think that the Cowboys have shown that they are trying to emphasize running the ball. You know, we saw that the Eagles, the main reason why they got to the Super Bowl was on the back of Saquon Barkley and their offensive line. Conversely, with the Kansas City Chiefs, I think it, again, solidifies the fact that you need to have a strong offensive line in this league. And when you do have holes in maybe 1-2 places, it's not going to win you championships. And we know that the Cowboys are trying to figure out what pieces they have along the offensive line. We don't know what the future holds for Zach Martin. I know he was talking about in New Orleans saying that he is still a free agent at the end of the day. He might not retire. Maybe he wants to go play for another team. Who knows where that stands? But there's questions about Tyler Guyton. Is he going to be your left tackle? Will he compete with Terrence Steele at right tackle? And then you have to figure out, okay, is Cooper Beebe better set at center, or is he going to be better at guard? I think that they're trying to find those answers through their coaching staff, you know, through Brian Schottenheimer and the hires that he had, with bringing in offensive line coach Connor Riley, Clayton Adams at OC. I think they're set up really well to emulate what the Eagles have tried to build over the last few years. And with the Chiefs, I think that just shows how much of an importance it is to get this offensive line situated. Because I really think when it comes to the division and Dak's comments about being very close to the Eagles, he's always going to say the right things. And I do agree that when you're looking at the divisional matchups, as a lot of people have pointed out on Twitter, it's like Dak has owned this division for forever. But honestly, for me, coming out of, you know, the Super Bowl, I think the Cowboys have to be trying to compete against the Commanders and the Eagles. Like, I think that right now they're tier 3 in this division, and, you know, we'll see what the Giants have in store for this offseason. But, like, they might not even be number 2 in this division anymore. It's always been Eagles, Cowboys, Cowboys, Eagles. But the Commanders have shown that in 1 year they can beat you in any type of way, especially with the young quarterback that they have. So I think that, you know, yes, they are close to the Eagles, but I still think that they have a ways to go, and they might have to beat the Commanders as well to even just claim that number 2 spot.
Brandon Loree of Blogging the Boys. Well, to get closer, what would be the first step in Brandon Loree's mind? We look at the draft. It's just around the corner. A lot of Cowboys fans, myself, getting excited when it comes to draft talk. You have pick 12. Kind of where were you at on where this draft and the early selection should go versus where you're at now after seeing the season, the NFL season end, after hearing some of the comments from the front office, just all the talk and chatter? Have you waned on which kind of direction you want the Cowboys to go and rebuild this team, or are you in the same spot that you were kind of post Cowboys?
So looking at just a few different things, a few different factors here, looking at the coaching history for the Cowboys, when they've had a first-year head coach, not first-time head coach, but a head coach in their first year, going back all the way to Bill Parcells. Bill Parcells drafted the defensive guy. Wade Phillips drafted the defensive guy. Mike McCarthy and Jason Garrett both took offensive players. So their backgrounds are in offense for Jason Garrett and Mike McCarthy, defense for Wade Phillips and Bill Parcells. Now, that's not a perfect science to tell you exactly where they're going, but when you look at the emphasis that they have put on running the football on the offensive side of the ball with the hire of Brian Schottenheimer, I'm kind of circling that as sort of, if you had to split it in half, is it going to be offense? Is it going to be defense? I'm going to lean a little bit more offense right now. And I think that there's a lot of defensive line depth in this draft, as Brian Broaddus, Zach Walchuk, all these guys on the fan have alluded to. There's a lot of defensive line depth in this draft. So I think if you can get one of these top offensive players, I think that sets up the Cowboys really well, especially if a lot of other teams want to go defensive line. I look at 2 names, McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona, and every time I try and shake the Ashton Jeanty hype at number 12, I just keep going back to him, because if he's one of the top 5 players overall in this draft, you just, at the end of the day, you have to say, well, what are we doing? We just want to take the best players available. We saw that happen with CeeDee Lamb in 2020. Did the Cowboys really need a wide receiver? No, but he was the best player on the board, so why not take him? He'll improve your team at the end of the day regardless. And I know Emmitt Smith did talk about that, you know, the Cowboys might not be able to use Ashton Jeanty right now, but I think that having a elite running back, we saw what happened when Dak Prescott took over in 2016. Having Ezekiel Elliott to lean on when you're still trying to figure things out made things so much easier for the team, for the offense, and it led to success. So I think if Ashton Jeanty can have that type of impact on this team, I think it's going to be paying off dividends right away for Schottenheimer in his first year. So for me, Gentry was on the board at 12. I'll pick him every day of the week right now.
Tell you what, Brandon, you might be kind of steering me in that direction, and for the other reason too is like you alluded to. I mean, look, you got 4 years. I mean, you got 4 years of Dak. You got a 5-year running, a 5-year first-year deal. If you are the Dallas Cowboys, if you go ahead and get that deal done, or you go ahead and take that 5th-year option. So you're starting to it's starting to make a lot more sense to me in that sense. What would you do then from a free agency standpoint? We know that they've talked about what they're going to do, but kind of where are you at on the free agency front with this Dallas Cowboys front office?
I think you have to go and sign free agents for your defense. We saw a few years ago what Dante Fowler did for the Cowboys under Dan Quinn as just sort of this mercenary pass rusher. He was really good, and look at what the success he's had in Washington in his first year back with Dan Quinn. It's just you need to find these mercenary type players. Eric Kendricks was great for the Cowboys last year on a 1-year deal. And I think if you can plug the holes where the draft might be a little deficient, I think that if you can get another rotational pass rusher, I mean, we all love DeMarcus Lawrence, but maybe Father Time has caught up to him a little bit. I'd love to see him back just from a pure leadership standpoint and what he means to this team. I think he can help develop a lot of the young guys like you have in Marshawn Nealon. But I think if you want to go somewhere in free agency, I think you can afford to get another corner. I think you need to grab at least one, if not two linebackers, especially for depth within special teams. And then maybe somebody who can compete at the guard position along the offensive line. I think that the Cowboys desperately need defensive line help, but if they can, get somebody at defensive tackle like Osa re-signed, I think that's great. Chauncey
You think that's possible though? For the kind of money that they're talking about this dude, they're talking about 4 years, $80 million. You ain't re-signing him for 4 years, $80 million, are you?
We've talked about it on this show. I was asked about it too. I think he's priced himself out, but you never know. I think Micah Parsons, him, Chauncey Golston, they all just spent time together in Australia for the Australian Open. So these guys are very close. And maybe there's a way that Micah Parsons, he knows Jerry Jones. He talks to him all the time. He wants to get a contract done. He talked about taking a pay cut for Myles Garrett. Maybe he wants to take a pay cut in order to keep someone like an Osa and a Chauncey in the building. You just don't know what those conversations are like. So I think that if maybe the Cowboys can get some sort of a hometown discount, that would be great. But I just, in a league where players are trying to maximize as much money as possible, I think Osa might have priced himself out, but you never know. So I think that on the defensive side of the ball, they can sign some free agents that way. Maybe a few guys here and there, especially veteran wide receiver, maybe if they don't want to draft somebody.
Brandon, Loree, blogging the boys. All right, two-part question. I got to ask you the Lucas stuff here in just a second, but before that, last thing on the wide receiver front. Look, we're feeling good about the new Junior, our boy from Oregon, who's going to be the new wide receivers coach. And look, you as well as anybody knows he's got his hands full coming up in 2025. But look, you got the Cooper. We wish Cooper DeJean was available. You got Cooper Kupp. You got Devontae. You got DeAndre Hopkins, who again apparently he said he's going to stick around for one more year. Not really sure why after what we just saw from him. Is there a free agent wide receiver that if you were the Dallas Cowboys, you would take a long look at to add to that roster?
I think the Cooper Kupp connection is very interesting simply because the way Cooper Kupp has talked about his relationship with Adams, I mean, this is clearly a guy who is a mentor and a leader and almost like a father figure to him from everything that he's talked about. There was a quote from an article that I was reading where they were talking about Adams as a coach and they were interviewing Cooper Kupp, and they talked to him and they said, Kupp told a story about back as a freshman at Eastern Washington when the two of them spent time together. He was, very small guy, didn't think he would make the roster. He was trying to do his best as a freshman, and he sort of brought a cut-up tape to Adams to kind of pick out this really good part of the film, and he really was impressed with what he did, so he was trying to take it to his coach and have a glowing review. And he said Adams ripped it apart. He picked out every single negative thing. He knew that Cooper Kupp could have been better. So that's the type of guy that the Cowboys are getting in a coach, somebody who never really wants to settle for good enough. He wants to always make his guys better. So I think Cooper Kupp is a very interesting name given their connection. But honestly, I mean, he's our guy, Jonathan Mingo. This is, I think, a great thing for him.
Okay.
The way that the Cowboys have invested, in Mingo with the 4th-round pick has sort of been, underneath a microscope in his first sort of half year with the Cowboys, and of course going into this offseason. If Adams can get this type of production from the guys that he's worked with, and he has a great track history, I think that bodes well for guys like a Jalen Brooks, a Ryan Flournoy, your Jonathan Mingos, your Jalen Tolberts. And I do think that they need a veteran guy. I think Devontae Adams would be great, but if you could give me Cooper Kupp and the development of a Jalen Tolbert, a Jonathan Mingo, and maybe a rookie, I think that's where Adams has his work cut out for him. I think that would be a lot better situation given what the Cowboys had last year. And I mean, I would be happy if Brandon Cooks came back as well, too.
Luka trade, just look, I know we talk NFL, and I know that's your bag, but tell me how shocked you were when the news came down that Luka would no longer be a Maverick.
Well, I'll let you know, the ripple effect felt here all the way in New Jersey on the East Coast was almost like an earthquake. Whatever the largest magnitude earthquake it is possible, right. Double it. Because I'll tell you, when I was scrolling on Twitter, because I'm always on there trying to, figure things out in regards to the Cowboys, I thought, like everybody else, I thought it was fake news. And then you started hearing, nope, this is real, this is legit. And then you see the trade compensation. And again, NBA isn't my wheelhouse, but I'm like, why would you trade somebody that I know is one of the up-and-coming young superstars in the NBA for somebody who is an aging player with, a long injury history? And look at what happened. Unfortunately, AD's out for a significant amount of time right now. So I don't know. I don't know where Nico is at right now. I hope
nobody
he's safe.
does.
I hope he's with his family, hugging his loved ones, because I know the type of, kind of online conversation around him right now is not pretty, and especially within the house of the American Airlines Center. So I was completely shocked. I was, that just caught me off guard. You could tell I'm at a loss for words. I really don't know how to describe it. It's just something I wouldn't have done if I was in Nico's position, that's for sure.
We're almost 2 weeks into this thing, and we still don't know how to process it, especially after seeing him in a Lakers uniform last night. The one, the only, the undeniable Mr. Brandon Loree, staff writer for Blogging the Boys. You can find his work. He's the author of the Press Coverage newsletter. He's at Brandon is Right, WRITE, on the old X and Twitter. And where can they find the Press Coverage newsletter, Mr. Loree?
Yeah, it's over on Substack and in my bio on Twitter. And I will say I did see Blake's live reaction to the Luka news. And, I mean, I was praying for you, man, then, and I'm praying for you now. So We'll get through this. We'll see the other side of it.
Thankfully, he got 2 new cats, and so I guess, they're kind of nursing each other at this point. So, look, it is what it is. We're just trying to get through it one day at a time. Brandon, great stuff from you as always, my friend. We'll do this again soon as we get closer to the new year, or the new football year.
Appreciate it. And Jake from State Farm, keep doing some good work.